Hello, this is DigX7. I'm building Frostloop, a survival puzzle game where you are managing the last of humanity surviving on a train. This is Devlog 3, and in my previous devlogs, I've been mostly heads down and basically system implementation, from implementing these objectives you can see in the bottom left hand corner, to implementing various challenges and ways to make the player not want to screw up and die. But a lot of that work has pretty much left me in coding, my head in coding space, and I'm feeling a little tired of coding at the moment. So instead, I would like to add some audio to the game and put some work into that. Because right now, the game has no sound, no clicks, no music. That's because there is nothing right now, and I'd like to change that. So let's get started on working on that. And there you have it. I've been spending the past day or so figuring out a lot of these sound effects and slowly implementing them into the game. And what you just heard was the result of my work as I went through the tutorial, which I am getting very familiar with right now, as I am with most of my game. Makes sense as I'm developing it. But I had a lot of fun implementing a lot of these sound effects. Having spent nearly a month with this game having literally no sound in the background, it is just a night and day feeling, like going from literally no sound to having sounds and sound effects. Like the first time I heard it and found some of the backing track, it just felt so cool. I hope it's something you enjoy as much as I'm enjoying the final result of it. The process for actually making these sound effects all started with me looking for free sounds on various online sites. Two main sites that I used or ended up using most frequently is freesound.org and the Unity Asset Store. Simply by searching under audio sound effects and searching for free. Because this is my first game that I'm hoping to actually sell at the end of it, rather than just being a free game jam, I had to pay special attention to the licenses attached to all the assets that I'm either buying or downloading for free. Specifically making sure that they're either under some form of Creative Commons or if they're under some variation of free to use under attribution. So I've been having to make sure I copy all the attribution and legal text across. Beyond that, as opposed to just looking up for generic sound effects, I decided to keep all my sound effects having a mechanical sound or feel. That was a direction I ended up choosing just to kind of give myself some limitation and to have all the sound effects sound similar in a sense. One interesting sound effect sound effect pack that I found that I ended up using was through the Unity Asset Store. I found this Vehicle Essential sound effect pack that had a bunch of sounds of real car interiors, buttons and doors being opened and closed, as well as vans' doors. And this is the sound I'm actually using for a lot of the menus opening and closing, as I figured it would give it an interesting identity as opposed to a generic click for that. And then a lot of the on mouse hover sounds were also mechanical, either mechanical or metal clicks, as this lined up with the direction I wanted to go with to keep my sounds sounding similar. Some sound effects are literally just straight downloaded from the site as is, and is exactly the variation I'm using. Some other sound effects that I'm using in the game are actually a combination of 2 or 3 sounds that I combined using tools like Audacity to try around with a few things. One of those sounds is specifically the sounds used when you buy, repair, or sell a new train car. And I want to use a combination of a couple different sounds to make it sound like you're either constructing a new train car, disassembling, or repairing it. So if I buy this new one, so that sound you heard, I basically took a bunch of construction and mechanical sounds and kind of just combined them in Audacity. Same with that selling sound. And if I try and repair one, so again, I just took a lot of the sounds and tried to combine them. I will admit, well, it's fun to combine them. I don't really know what would make it sound good. So if you have any tips for how or what, less so how to make it sound good and more what you should be thinking about. Because at least for when I was making those sounds, I was trying to make them short, trying to make them not annoying. But beyond that, it was I was just randomly throwing stuff together to see what sticks. Maybe that's how the professionals do it. I'm not entirely sure. Ooh, another sound that was also a bit of a custom combination is the end turn sound, which admittedly is the one sound that I'm still not entirely sure about. This is especially as this might be the sound the players hear the most often throughout the game. I want it to feel... I was thinking of the specifically the next turn sound button that's used in the Civ games. I was trying to do something similar to that, though I worry this sound will end up being more annoying to the players by the end of the game. Though I'm not entirely sure. I think I'll stick with this version I have for now and might revisit it later. As I've been adding sounds to the game, any missing actions or interactions between the UI or stuff that now doesn't have any sounds now really stands out. And I still have a few things left to add. For example, in the pause menu doesn't have any sounds, or the main menu doesn't have any UI sounds that I'll need to go back through and add at some point. As well as a couple more, like when you get new objectives or complete them, or this card now currently doesn't have any UI that I'll have, or doesn't have any sounds, and I'll need to add those at some point. I might continue working on that. I might also want to start working on animations for the UI. Not entirely sure yet. So I ended up working on a combination of both the animations and UI sounds. I started off with the animations, so now each of the UI elements has a animation that plays on the first time it loads in, as well as all of the menus now have a little pop-in animation. And we'll see some of this as I play through this tutorial again. So we'll see, like, this build menu now has this little pop-in animation. It doesn't have a disappearing animation, but I'm actually fine with that. But we'll see this inspector also has an animation that plays. So I've literally gone through and made it so every menu has a little, like, it's only a 0.2 second pop-in animation. So I'm hoping it'll look good without annoying the player too much. And then we also have this new animation, a little pop-up notification that there was like one of the last things I did recently was build that. So that's a whole new UI system. It's really just listening for, hey, when is it calling for, hey, a new notification? And right now the idea is to show that every time the player unlocks something. So for example, now they have the sleeping car unlocked. That notification actually isn't tied to my unlock system, because my unlock system is also being used for some stuff like showing new UI elements. It's actually tied to my objective system, so I made it so, hey, when I finish certain objectives, I can say, hey, play this unique notification. I can also later have, in my unlock UI, trigger it as well, but not every unlock has to trigger that UI notification on the front of the screen. So that's another thing I worked on. But if I keep playing through this tutorial, we can keep seeing some of my UI animations I worked on. We now have the farm car unlocked. And if you might have to go back on the video a little bit, but if you noticed, these on the top here also had a little kind of pop-in animation at the top that played. Very, very short, and it's fine if the player misses it, but it's a nice little polished touch that I actually quite like. Let's build this, and we'll notice now these resources popped in, as well as this resource button popped in from the side. Again, we have a pop-in animation for our train inspector, and same with this. So like I was saying, pretty much every menu has a little fade-in animation now. If we go end turn, now you might or might not have seen it, but there was a little fade-in animation played for everything else. So all the this other HUD UI does have a fade-in animation. At the moment, my game seems to be running into, at least in the editor, having some performance hiccups. Whenever I press the end turn button, it'll sometimes hitch slightly. I've yet to find out if that only happens in my editor or if that will happen in the build version too. Luckily, it's just a slight hitch, and so it's not, even if it is happening in the final build, it's not the end of the world, because this isn't a real-time thing, so, you know, slight hitches or frame drops don't actually impact the player performance of this game too much. Not sure why it's happening, but that's something for me to look into maybe later. But regardless, all of these other UI elements had little fade-in animations that they played. One I can actually show you is up here where our negatives would have shown. If I set this train car and go end turn, you'll notice this little homeless icon popped in right here. So that's another little animation I added for when this little chip appears. And if we get rid of it by buying a sleeping car and then ending our turn, it'll have disappeared. You might have just spawned it just right there. This event card UI also has a brief little fade-in animation. So this has animation as well. I've also gone ahead and updated some of the UI elements. So for this, the font now matches the rest of the fonts I'm using in my game, as well as the button here. Buttons here match the same button styles as everything else, and they have sounds. Another UI little polish I did is, oh yeah, if I open up the, you know what, here, let me show you the other menu animations at the moment. So we got the guides that can be popped up, resources has a little pop in, same with research, even with the pause menu has this little kind of fade down animation. In fact, all of these menus have it. To maybe a little bit excessive, but here is the, so here's our splash screen, which also has a fade in animation. Again, it's using the same font as everything else in the game. I might go back later and change this to actual graphic instead of just having this just text, but at least this has been updated for now. And then here's our main menu. Looks very similar to our pause menu. Got the same options. The credits, because I was adding animations, luckily I was able to add this credit scroll as just an animation I was able to do. So literally all of these credits are, it's just my name at the top, and then here's all the attributions for all the free assets I'm using. I don't know if I have to put them all in the credits here, or if there's just like a license file I could have put these all in, but you know, as a solo developed project, it feels kind of nice to have long credits instead of just my name and that's it. I go back here. See, there. So as the scene loaded up, you might have actually been able to see the brief pop-in animation of all of these. If I swap map scenes, you'll notice these UI buttons down here also kind of pop in and out and have little animations as they swap. So, those... Oh, there's one other thing I want to point out. So up in the resources up here, I added a little animation to count up as these numbers count up. So here, as I press end turn, watch this 45 right here that's about to hit added 15. Okay, might have been hard to see with this card that appeared over top of it, but you might have noticed that it did a brief little count up between 45 to 60. So instead of just popping from 45 to 60, it had a brief little like ticker counter up go as it counted up 15. Let's see if that shows again. Yeah, so like right there. So all of these numbers up here and these ones as well are supposed to have little ticker counters or like little animation that plays as they scroll up and down. In fact, all of these have that up here. I did not go through and add those numbers to any of these menus here, or did not add those animations anywhere else, because at the moment, you shouldn't be able to see those numbers change while you have those menus open. You should only be able to even see the numbers change while these menus are open. That's kind of what I've been working on for the last little bit. We also, the objectives here also have animation, little slide-in animations when they first show up here. That's kind of what I've been working on for the past little bit. I think, let's see, where my head's at right now with this project, it's interesting. So just to pull back the curtain a little bit, some of my plans or hopes for this project was to hopefully have a demo ready for, my hope was to have a demo ready for the October Next Fest coming up October 13th through the 20th, I want to say. I believe it's that week. But for some behind the scenes stuff, in order to upload anything onto Steam, any builds, any full games, any demos, anything, Steam needs to review the game at least once on your first upload. And that review process that Steam does, because they're just making sure that you meet all their guidelines, you're not uploading malware or anything. That review process for that initial upload can take anywhere from like 3 to 5 business days if they don't flag you for anything. And if they flag you for something, you've got to resubmit a new build, and it has to re-go through that review process. Now, luckily, if I'm understanding correctly, once you've gotten your initial build through their initial review, you can make changes to that build and resubmit new uploads. So if like you had a new patch, a new version, you can upload that supposedly without going through their review process and like upload a new version almost instantly. At least that's my understanding of it. I say all of that because if I wanted a demo of this game to be live on the Steam store page before the Steam Next Fest starts, which is again October 13th, that means I at minimum need to be uploading a demo like the week before, which would be October, which would be like basically October, the first week of October. So like October 1st or October 2nd are kind of the last days. You know what? Scratch that. Let me double check the dates on that Steam Next Fest before I continue this. So I just double checked the dates, and it turns out I'm right. Steam Next Fest for October runs from October 13th through October 20th. Now, as I was saying, to your initial build that you upload to Steam needs to go through Steam review, which can take 3 to 5 business days if it goes perfectly. If they fault you for any reason, you gotta resubmit a new build, and it needs to go through that Steam review process again for another 3 to 5 business days. So worst case scenario, you could have something that's been in review for 4 business days, they fail you for something, and then you need another 3 to 5 business days to not only change it on your end, change whatever they faulted you for on your end, but to submit it again and to go through the review process again. So technically, according to the Steam, basically Steam development dashboard, which I don't think I'm allowed to show anywhere, but as I'm looking at it, they are basically telling me that kind of like by October 8th is like the last absolute like cutoff deadline, or last day they'd recommend, actually last day it's required to upload a demo build for review. And because that puts you basically 3 business days, right? Because October 8th is on a Wednesday, so that would give you Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, 3 business days, and then Steam Next Fest starts on that next Monday. The catch is, though, if your build fails if you upload on the 8th and your build fails review for any reason, you cannot make Steam Next Fest. So ideally, you're uploading your build, like, your initial build, like, 2 weeks or so before the actual cutoff deadline, just to give yourself some wiggle room. Now, that would put you uploading your build at around September, either October 1st or, like, September 24th. Either, like, a week or 2 weeks out. At time of recording, it is September 21st. So, at time of recording, ideally, I should be uploading a demo for review within like 3 days. And I'm gonna be honest, I do not feel that my game is at the point. I feel like it's getting there polish-wise, where I feel like it could go for a video or it could go for a demo. I do not feel it is at the point content-wise where I could reasonably have a demo up. Because at the moment, this game is a lot of kind of just back-end systems I've made, but not a ton of front-end player-facing content. I do have content in the form of, I do have a bunch of unused art assets for various trains that I'd used in my Game Jam version, but that's about it. So when I say content, what's some content I feel like I would need to add in order to make this demo Steam Next Fest worthy demo? Well, we would talk, need many more different types of resources. One of the main things I'm thinking the player will be working around is, hey, so the main goal the player is trying to max out is this hope. Well, not maxing out, this discontent. And I kind of want the player to be doing that through meeting either objectives or possibly through random events on the map. Now, to meet objectives, I want them to be figuring out how to create X number of resources, which they'll be doing through either unlocking or building stations, and making sure they're building and using the right number of train cars. Well, to have a good, at least in my head, to have a good variety of resources the players can build, I feel like I need to figure out both a bunch of potential resources they could make, as well as the resource chains or sequences of actions they would need to figure out to do in order to make those. So, like, for example, one resource chain is rations. So rations need raw food, which need to be then converted into rations. And you get raw food from farm cars, which then need to be converted to rations in the kitchen car. So the player would need to figure that out, unlock both those cars, and set them up. So that's one resource chain. So I'd want to basically figure out a couple other variations of those that the player has to figure out. So that's content one I would need to add, is basically implementing a bunch of more resource chains. And the implementation of those impacts both the resources system as well as the train cars system themselves. Content two that I still feel I need to make is I feel like I need to make the guides, because if I create a demo and put it out on Steam Next Fest, I'm not going to be sitting over the shoulder of everyone playing. I can't teach them how to play. So, especially with a system-heavy game as this, I feel like having at least decent or solid guides that people can look at and go, okay, here's kind of how to play, or here's what does what, is going to be super crucial to how the game needs to work. So that's content two. So resource chains, guides. Another thing is research. Currently this research tab is kind of just in a template, but I don't have anything you can actually unlock. And I feel like I'd want this to be kind of the main progression through the game. So that's a third content thing I want to figure out. And this is less so, at least in my head, is less so systems heavy and is more design heavy, and figuring out what things can I, with my systems at being what they are, have the players be able to unlock and progress through. And importantly, can they, if they unlock this in a certain way, if they quit out and then reload their save, will everything still work, or will stuff basically break as it loads back up? And I say this because two things I at least had in mind of possibly unlocking are the max amount of resources and max amount of trains the players can place. And at least at the moment in my head, there's not a clean way of having that data be saved and loaded properly. Some other stuff they could unlock could be like more types of train cars they can build, and that's actually easy enough to do. I'm already doing that, actually. So that's something I can figure out. So far, 3 content things I still feel like I need to implement are the resource chains, the guides, the research, as well as on the map here. At the moment, these random event spots, I only have one type of event implemented. Now, behind the scenes, each of these events are custom scriptable objects, so creating new types of events is actually really easy and will just take some time implementing and balancing them. but that is another content thing I would have to, smaller content thing, but still another content thing. Even though it's easy, it will still take time to do that. Another kind of last big thing I'd want to implement is these stations. So at the moment, each of these stations, if I just back up here along the map, and if I go, let's see, it would be west. So at the moment for the stations, you can only build coal stations, and what these would do is, I don't actually have the wood to build it, but they would give you a certain number of coal each time you land on them. Now, at the moment, there's a couple of content things around the station I would need to build. One of those being kind of just UI to show the status of the station, like, is this unlocked? If so, what resource is it building? Also, I would want to change the way the system works behind the scenes, so stations need a certain number of turns to recharge, because otherwise what I could do is I can basically kind of just go back and forth on top of the station and just endlessly farm the coal resource from it, which isn't what I want them to be doing. I also, so that's one thing I would need to implement, as well as implementing multiple types of stations that can have multiple types of resources, whether those be like coal, wood, really any of the given resources that you could get in the game. Beyond that, though, I've been wanting to improve my station system in a way so that players can essentially choose at different station locations when they first get there and unlock it, choose what type of station they want to build there. Much in the same way like how you can choose what type of train cars to build. And this would allow me to basically give something that the players could unlock, so they could unlock multiple station types that they could lay down, as well as open up the possibility of stations themselves having health and durability, as well as needing workers assigned to them. So I kind of basically want to take all the same stuff that a normal train car can do and add that to the stations themselves. So the stations really, and that's something I would like to do, but I don't need to do. So the stations are kind of have a lot of both content and other, like, basically redoing how the stations would work. So to kind of bring it back home, to get the game demo worthy, I'm basically at a point where there's a bunch of content I would need or want to implement. Those including multiple resource chains, the guides, the research page, as well as redoing how the station is, or stations work, and generally rebalancing some things. So like rebalancing a lot of the either health and buffs of the different trains. Another thing I know I want to rebalance is the storm. At the moment, it covers like way too much space, and so avoiding it is kind of impossible when I want the game to kind of be built around the idea of going or entering the storm should be like an absolute last resort. Yeah, so that's kind of a fifth content thing. So all those 5 content things, ideally if I wanted to upload the demo as early as possible, I need to finish those in 3 days. And I have a part-time job and only really get to work on this game kind of part-time. So in reality, I would have like like 2.5-ish days, or like 1.5 days, really. But that's if I was to upload as early as possible. I guess now that I'm thinking about it, and it actually probably was a little helpful for me looking up the exact dates they recommend, because I thought the demo hard upload date for the demo was like the 24th, but it turns out I can technically like the October 8th is the hard deadline, so that does give me more time than I was originally thinking. But regardless, I am definitely feeling myself up against the wall in terms of meeting this deadline. I have at least been realizing I might have to be okay with the fact that I just barely missed the cutoff for the Steam Next Fest, even though that's not something I want or something I really hope to make. And if I miss this October Next Fest, like the next Next Fest after that isn't until February, which should be long after, or I'm hoping is long after I'm like completely done with this project anyway. But that's at least kind of where my head is at right now. So all that to say is I'm really enjoying a lot of the polish the game is coming off, or has. I'm really enjoying the polish the game has so far, but kind of facing down the bunch of basically content that the game actually needs to get it to a potential demo, hopefully that I can get in time. And that will likely be the subject of the next devlogs. I think this is going to be all for this devlog. Thanks for watching, and don't forget to like and subscribe.